It was a stormy Tuesday evening when Cole Harper, a single dad and auto mechanic in a quiet mountain town, heard an urgent knock on his door. Standing there were two children, muddy, trembling, and holding onto each other like lifelines. A note was pinned to the older boy's jacket. "They're your responsibility now. We want nothing to do with them." The Cole stood frozen, his 5-year-old daughter Maddie peeking from behind his leg. The boy introduced himself as Ethan, 10, and the girl as Lily, 7. Their mother had recently died, Cole's late wife's younger sister. The kids had been living with their father's wealthy but cold-hearted family in the city. After the funeral, they were unceremoniously cast out with nothing. Without hesitation, Cole took them in. He lived modestly. His home was small, his tools worn, and his fridge often half empty. But he had heart. Over the next few weeks, the silence in the new kids gave way to laughter, and Maddie proudly declared she had 2 new best friends forever. But Cole couldn't shake a question. Why would a wealthy family abandon innocent children? Something didn't add up. Chapter 2. Secrets in a journal. Cole was sorting through a box of his late wife Emily's belongings one evening when he found a leather-bound journal, sealed with a silk ribbon. It wasn't hers, but her sister's, Olivia, the children's mother. Curious, he opened it. The entries stunned him. Olivia wrote about secret meetings with her husband's family lawyers, about signing documents she was never allowed to read. There were notes about hidden bank accounts, properties in Europe, and cryptic mentions of a trust fund meant for her children. Olivia hinted at fears her in-laws would cut the kids out of their inheritance if anything happened to her. Cole's hands trembled as he read a final line, written weeks before her death. "If anything happens to me, someone has to protect my kids. They deserve the life I work to hide." Cole realized the in-laws hadn't just abandoned the kids, they'd stolen their future. Chapter 3. The Billionaire Truth. Determined to uncover the truth, Cole drove to the city with the journal in hand. He visited Olivia's former lawyer, a kind but cautious woman named Margaret Dell. When she saw the journal, her expression hardened. "I told Olivia to make copies," she whispered. But she was scared they'd find out. Margaret confirmed everything. Olivia had inherited a vast fortune from her grandfather, investments, stocks, even a Mediterranean villa. But her in-laws, controlling and power-hungry, had forced her into silence. When she died, they erased all proof of her children's rights. But now, Margaret said, eyes gleaming with resolve, "this journal changes everything." With Margaret's help, Cole filed a legal case. The media picked it up. Headlines swirled. "Widow's secret fortune," and "the siblings wrongfully cast out." Public sympathy roared. The court ordered the in-laws to relinquish control of the trust. Ethan and Lily were declared rightful heirs. As reporters crowded Cole's front yard, he stood firm, shielding the children from the chaos. "They're not a story," he said. "They're my family." Chapter 4. A home, rebuilt in gold and love. Months passed. The estate was settled. Ethan and Lily now had access to their trust, but under Cole's guardianship. Instead of splurging on luxury, Cole used the funds to build a better life. He expanded their home, invested in a local after-school center, and set up college funds for all 3 kids. Maddie, Ethan, and Lily thrived in school. They formed a band, played in the park, and called Cole Dad, with full hearts. The town, once small and quiet, began to see Cole as a hero, an everyday man who didn't chase money, but fought for justice. One evening, Cole found an old photograph of Olivia and Emily as children. He placed it on the mantel with a soft smile. "Your mom did everything she could," he whispered to the siblings. "And now, we'll make sure none of it was in vain." The family didn't live like billionaires, but they lived richly with purpose, peace, and the kind of love money could never buy. It was a cold, blustery Tuesday evening in the quiet town of Pinebrook when Cole Harper heard the desperate knock that would change his life forever. The wind howled through the trees, rustling the last leaves of autumn as they skittered across the gravel driveway of his modest home, tucked behind the woods. He'd just returned from a long shift at the auto shop, grease still under his fingernails, and his 5-year-old daughter Maddie was busy coloring on the living room floor, the warm glow of the fireplace flickering across her cheeks. The knock came again, sharp, urgent. Cole opened the door expecting a neighbor, or maybe a stranded traveler, but what he saw froze him. 2 children stood on his porch, shivering and soaked from the rain, their small hands clenched tightly together. The boy looked about 10, protective and wary, while the girl beside him, probably 7, trembled like a leaf. Her lips were blue. They had no jackets, just thin sweaters clinging to their bodies. A worn backpack hung from the boy's shoulder, and a crumpled note was pinned to his chest with a rusty safety pin. Cole knelt instinctively, reaching for the note, and read it aloud in disbelief. "They're your responsibility now. We want nothing to do with them." No name, no number, nothing else. He looked back at the children, the boy lifting his chin defiantly. "I'm Ethan," he said. "This is Lily. Our mom died last week. Your Uncle Cole." Cole's breath caught. The names sounded familiar, painfully so. His mind reeled back through the years, to the sister of his late wife, Olivia. They'd been close once. Olivia had been a free spirit, full of light and laughter, until she married into a wealthy family that whisked her away to another life, far from Pinebrook. They'd lost touch after Emily died. Cole hadn't even known Olivia had kids. And now, standing on his doorstep in the pouring rain, were her children, his niece and nephew, abandoned like forgotten luggage. "Come in," he said gently, ushering them inside. Maddie peeked around the corner, her crayon paused in mid-air. "Daddy, who are they?" "Friends," Cole said simply. "They're going to stay with us for a little while." He set to work drying them off, giving them blankets, warming up leftover spaghetti, all while his mind spun in disbelief. Ethan was quiet but observant, watching everything with sharp eyes. Lily barely spoke, clinging to her brother and refusing to let go of her little unicorn plush toy. That night, Cole found space on the living room couch for them, piling on pillows and blankets, and sat up late, staring at the fire, trying to understand how anyone could abandon children like this, especially a family as wealthy as Olivia's in-laws. Over the next few days, Cole learned the rest. Olivia had passed away suddenly from an undetected illness. Her husband, Ethan and Lily's father, had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. Since then, the children had lived with their paternal grandparents, the Hargroves, an influential and powerful family known for their chain of international luxury hotels. Cole remembered them vaguely from the wedding years ago. Polished, cold, always judging. It made a strange, painful sort of sense that they'd cast the children aside once Olivia was gone. Maybe the kids didn't fit their image. Maybe they didn't want the burden. Maybe there was more. But none of it mattered now. The children were here, and Cole, despite having very little, wasn't about to send them away. He called the Child Protection Services to report that the kids were with him, but they seemed more interested in ticking boxes than solving anything. No one else seemed to care. So he did. Cole rearranged everything. He turned his workshop storage room into a makeshift bedroom, borrowed bunk beds from a friend, and started packing extra lunchboxes every morning. Maddie, who had once longed for siblings, was thrilled. She declared herself Lily's best friend on the second day, and the 2 girls were soon inseparable, building forts out of pillows, sharing secrets, and giggling under blankets with flashlights past bedtime. Ethan was slower to open up. He was protective, serious, always scanning the room like he expected something bad to happen. But Cole noticed how he always made sure Lily got the bigger piece of toast or gave her his juice box without hesitation. He was trying so hard to be strong. One afternoon, while changing the oil on an old Ford in the driveway, Cole found Ethan sitting nearby with a book. Not a comic book, an actual novel. "You read?" Cole asked, surprised. Ethan shrugged. "Mom said books make you safe. Because they can take you anywhere." The words hit Cole like a hammer. He put down the wrench and sat beside him. "She sounds like she was a good mom." Ethan nodded. "She tried. But after we moved in with Grandpa and Grandma Hargrove, she was different. Sad all the time. They were always angry. They said we were a disgrace. That we didn't belong." Cole clenched his jaw. "You do belong. Your family. That's all that matters now." Ethan didn't reply, but for the first time, he leaned against Cole's shoulder. Just a little. It was enough. Life settled into a new rhythm. Cole adjusted his work schedule. The kids got enrolled in school, and weekends became pancake mornings, bike rides, and game nights. But Cole couldn't shake the question that hovered like a shadow over everything. Why would the Hargroves, with all their power and resources, throw away their own grandchildren? Something wasn't right, and that feeling intensified when Cole started sorting through a few boxes of old photos and letters left behind by Emily. In one of the boxes, tucked between albums, was a small leather-bound journal with a silk ribbon. It wasn't Emily's handwriting. It was Olivia's. That night, after putting the kids to bed, Cole sat at the kitchen table and opened the journal. And what he found would unravel everything he thought he knew. Cole Harper sat motionless at the kitchen table, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house as the night deepened and shadows played across the walls. The old leather-bound journal lay open before him, its worn pages filled with a script that trembled between hope and fear. Olivia's handwriting was delicate, thoughtful, each word carefully written, like a confession whispered across time. Cole read the entries slowly, eyes widening with every paragraph, his finger clutching the sides of the book like a lifeline. Olivia had been keeping secrets, big ones. Her entries began simply enough, with reflections on motherhood, sleepless nights, the joy in Lily's giggle or Ethan's curiosity. But it didn't take long for the tone to shift. The journal became a map of quiet desperation. "They don't trust me," she wrote. "They say I'm just the girl who married into money. But this was never about money to me. I just wanted safety for the kids." There were mentions of lawyers, meetings held in secrecy, documents she wasn't allowed to read, financial agreements pushed in front of her with cold smiles and pens already uncapped. The deeper Cole read, the clearer it became. Olivia had inherited a vast fortune from her maternal grandfather, a mysterious European investor who had passed before ever meeting his grandchildren. She never spoke of it out loud, not even to Emily, and certainly not to her in-laws. She was afraid of them. The Hargroves, it turned out, hadn't just been cruel guardians. They were predators. Olivia's fortune had been hidden in international trust funds and foreign bank accounts, assets her grandfather protected from legal manipulation. But once she married into the Hargrove family, they pressured her relentlessly. They convinced her to transfer control of those assets for safekeeping, promising the money would go into trusts for Ethan and Lily when they came of age. But the journal told another story, one of betrayal. "They lied to me," she wrote. "I signed things I didn't understand. They said they'd protect the kids if anything happened. Now I know better. If I die, they'll erase every trace of what's theirs." One passage in particular made Cole's heart drop. "I made copies. The originals are in the deposit box under my maiden name. But if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Please, whoever finds this, don't let them take everything from my children. They deserve the life I worked to protect in silence." Cole leaned back in his chair, stunned. He stared out the dark kitchen window, past the trees that whispered in the wind, toward a night that suddenly seemed darker than ever. This wasn't just a case of neglect. Ethan and Lily hadn't simply been unwanted by snobbish relatives. They had been deliberately cast out so the Hargroves could absorb what wasn't theirs. It was theft, disguised in suits and legalese. And now Cole was the only person who could stop it. The next morning, he packed the journal in a sealed envelope, kissed Maddie, Ethan, and Lily goodbye, and told his elderly neighbor across the street to keep an eye on the kids. He took the day off work and drove 2 hours into the city, winding his old pickup through congested streets until he found the small legal office Olivia had once mentioned in a tucked-away journal entry. Margaret Dell, trust attorney. Her name was scrawled next to a line that read, "Only one I trust." The building was unassuming, a brick corner office between a laundromat and a sandwich shop. Inside, the walls were lined with law books, and the air smelled faintly of lemon oil and old coffee. Margaret Dell was older than Cole expected, with gray hair pulled tightly into a bun, wire-framed glasses, and eyes sharp with intellect and exhaustion. When Cole introduced himself and handed her the journal, she went very still. She read the first few pages, then looked up at him with a face hardened by years of courtroom battles. "I told Olivia to keep copies," she said quietly. "I never knew if she listened. My God, she did." Cole sat, explaining everything. How the kids had shown up, the note, the abandonment. Margaret listened without interrupting, her fingers laced under her chin. When he finished, she stood and locked the office door. "What I'm about to tell you can't leave this room until we're ready," she said. "The Hargroves have money and power, but this journal, it's the key to unraveling them." She pulled up a secure folder from her desk drawer and began matching entries in Olivia's journal with real case files, confirming trusts that had mysteriously gone dormant after Olivia's death. Several trust accounts that should have matured in Ethan and Lily's name had been diverted or declared inactive through questionable legal maneuvers. They used a power of attorney that Olivia signed under duress, Margaret said grimly. This wasn't guardianship. This was corporate fraud masquerading as family. She explained that if Cole filed a legal petition as the children's temporary guardian, they could challenge the Hargrove estate and request an emergency court hearing. But it wouldn't be simple. The Hargroves had lawyers, lobbyists, and judges on speed dial. This would become a war. Cole wasn't afraid. "I'm not rich, but I don't care if it takes every ounce of energy I have," he said. "I promised Ethan and Lily they were safe. I'm going to keep that promise." Margaret smiled for the first time. "You remind me of Olivia." That night, back in Pinebrook, the house buzzed with the smell of grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind of quiet comfort food that turned hard days into manageable ones. Cole didn't tell the kids what he'd learned, not yet. But he noticed something different in Ethan. The boy seemed less guarded, watching Lily laugh with Maddie as they argued over which cartoon to watch. "You okay?" Cole asked as they sat on the front steps later, watching the stars. Ethan nodded slowly. "It feels different here, like we can breathe." Cole put a hand on his shoulder. "You can? And I'm going to make sure you never have to hold your breath again." Over the next few weeks, the legal wheels began turning. Cole filed for emergency guardianship, backed by the journal and Margaret's documentation. He got anonymous threats in the mail, vague warnings to back off, leave well enough alone, and remember your place. But he didn't flinch. Pinebrook rallied behind him. His boss gave him flexible hours, neighbors dropped off groceries, and even the local newspaper published a quiet op-ed. "Real family is the one that fights for you." Then came the call. Margaret had secured a court hearing. The children would finally have a voice. When Cole told Ethan, the boy looked at him with wide eyes. "Do we have to go?" he asked. "You don't have to do anything," Cole replied. "But if you do, the judge will see exactly who they tried to erase." Ethan was quiet a long time. Then he nodded. "I want them to know we're not scared." Cole smiled. "Good. Because they should be." As the hearing date approached, Cole began noticing the kids changing. Not just adjusting, but healing. Lily started humming while brushing her teeth, a tune Olivia used to sing. Ethan wrote poems, little scraps he tucked into his math book. Maddie taught them to dance in socks across the wooden floors. The house was louder now, messier, filled with backpacks and spilled cereal and toothpaste on mirrors. It was also more alive than ever. One rainy Sunday, Cole stood watching the three of them curled up on the couch under one blanket, a movie playing, popcorn everywhere. He felt a wave of emotion so deep it startled him. He hadn't planned on any of this, but now he couldn't imagine life without them. Whatever came next, he was ready. He was no longer just a single dad. He was the guardian of a legacy hidden in silence, and soon, the world would hear Olivia's voice. Through the children she died protecting, and the man who stood up when no one else would. The courthouse loomed over the city like a monument to old battles. Some fought with words, some with power, some lost before they ever began. But as Cole Harper stood outside its towering glass doors, holding Ethan and Lily's hands, he felt a strange calm settle in his chest. He had no tailored suit, No expensive watch, no army of lawyers like the Hargroves surely did. What he did have was truth, and a journal that proved it. Dressed in his cleanest flannel shirt and work boots, Cole looked over at Margaret Dell, the gray-haired attorney who had become a quiet guardian angel for their cause. She gave him a steady nod before leading them inside. The courtroom was colder than expected, with sterile lighting and walls the color of wet ash. At the far end, Judge Eliza Warren sat poised like a falcon on the bench, sharp-eyed and still, known for slicing through theatrics with a single raised brow. The Hargroves were already seated across the aisle. Elliot and Meredith Hargrove, slick in their designer clothes, faces carved in stone, radiating the entitled arrogance of people who had never been told no. Their lawyer, a smug man named Douglas Keene, barely looked at the children. He glanced at Cole like one would glance at a leaky faucet. Annoying, insignificant. Cole squeezed Ethan's hand under the table. The hearing began with the legal formalities. Motions read, names recorded, files shuffled. Then, Margaret stood and presented the journal. The air shifted. Even the court stenographer blinked twice when Olivia's handwriting was read aloud. Margaret read excerpts that outlined the deception, the financial coercion, the manipulation of trust funds. She laid out a timeline so damning that even Keene looked briefly uncomfortable before masking it in practiced boredom. When it was Cole's turn to speak, he stood slowly. His voice was steady, not rehearsed or perfect, but raw, authentic. "I'm not a lawyer. I don't know about offshore accounts or family trusts," he began, looking at the judge directly. "What I do know is that these two kids showed up on my porch with a note pinned to a jacket. I didn't plan for this, but I also didn't hesitate, because family doesn't abandon family. It protects them." He paused. "I don't want their money. I want their names to be honored. I want them to have what their mother left for them, what their father would have wanted, and what the Hargroves tried to erase." Judge Warren leaned forward slightly, hands folded. "Mr. Harper, you've provided shelter, support, and emotional care for these children since their abandonment. Are you prepared to take permanent guardianship?" Cole nodded. "For as long as they'll have me." Then, to everyone's surprise, Ethan stood up. The courtroom murmured, but the judge raised a hand for silence. "Would you like to speak, young man?" she asked. Ethan swallowed hard, then nodded. "My mom used to tell me that money doesn't make you good. She said people show you who they are when things go wrong," he said. "The Hargroves never read to us, never tucked us in. They called us burdens. But Uncle Cole never made us feel that way. He gives us bedtime stories and pancakes, and he doesn't have to pretend. We know he loves us." His voice cracked at the end, but he stood tall. "We don't want to go back with them, not even if they had $1 million. Silence fell like snow. Even Judge Warren took a moment before writing something in her notes. The Hargroves' defense was weak at best, bluster and legal jargon, suggestions that the journal was inconclusive, claims that Cole was underqualified to raise children in affluent society. But Margaret countered expertly. She reminded the judge that love, safety, and evidence, not bank accounts, should determine guardianship. By noon, the decision was made. Judge Warren ruled in favor of Cole Harper. He was awarded full legal guardianship of Ethan and Lily Hargrove. The courtroom clapped, quietly, respectfully. The Hargroves stormed out in disbelief, their threats drowned by public applause and media flashes. The story went viral within hours. "Mechanic Dad wins custody over billionaire family." Read the headline on one news outlet. "Children reunited with justice," blared another. TV crews appeared outside Cole's small house in Pinebrook, and for days, he had to usher cameras away from the front lawn. Offers flooded in. Interviews, documentaries, even a movie deal. Cole declined them all. "I'm not trying to be famous," he told one reporter. "I'm just trying to be a dad." But something else happened, too. Something no one expected. In the wake of the court decision, an independent audit of the Hargrove family's financial dealings was launched. Anonymous whistleblowers stepped forward. The trust accounts Olivia had left were not only real, they were far more massive than anyone had realized. European estates, stocks in multiple global companies, art collections. Olivia had been a billionaire on paper, her assets scattered and hidden beneath layers of obfuscation. The journal had opened the floodgates. Now it wasn't just about custody, it was about legacy. The trust, by design, could not be claimed by the Hargroves. It defaulted back to the children through their appointed guardian, now legally Cole. When the bank called to inform him of the transfer, Cole sat in stunned silence for 10 full minutes. The number was surreal, 9 zeros. He had spent years budgeting gas money, clipping coupons, fixing things instead of replacing them. And now he was a billionaire on behalf of 2 kids who were eating PB&J in the next room. But his first move wasn't to celebrate. It was to protect. Margaret helped him establish a secure financial trust under his and the children's names. Most of the funds were locked for future use. Education, emergencies, charity. Then Cole quietly donated a massive sum to rebuild the town's public school system, fix the leaking roof at the library, and renovate the local children's hospital where Emily had once volunteered. Reporters swarmed him again, asking if he would upgrade, move, change. But Cole had already decided he wouldn't. He did, however, buy a larger house nearby. Nothing extravagant, but enough space so each kid had their own room, a treehouse out back, and a garage large enough to start a small restoration business for old cars. He hired local teens as interns, gave Ethan a desk beside him in the workshop, and turned the shop into something more than a business. It became a learning ground, a family operation, a safe haven. Ethan and Lily thrived. They enrolled in music and art programs, took jiu-jitsu classes, and even started a podcast for kids raised by single parents. Maddie became the trio's cheerful glue, always dragging them into impromptu dance-offs and lemonade stand fundraisers. One evening, as they sat around a fire pit roasting marshmallows, Lily asked, "Do you think Mom knows we're okay?" Cole smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "I think she always knew you would be. That's why she left the map behind." Ethan looked at the stars. "We're gonna make her proud." Cole nodded. "You already are." That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Cole stepped into his office. The same small corner of the house where Olivia's journal now rested in a locked drawer. He ran his fingers over the cover, then looked up at the wall where 3 framed photos now hung, one of Emily and Olivia as kids, one of the new family smiling at the beach, and one of the journal's final page which read, "If love is the inheritance I leave, then let them grow rich in it." Cole smiled. They had inherited more than money. They'd inherited strength, resilience, truth. And now, thanks to one brave mother, a quiet mechanic, and a fire that wouldn't quit, they were building something worth far more than wealth, a home grounded in trust, shaped by compassion, and secured by love that would never, ever run out. Months had passed since the courtroom victory, and the tidal wave of revelation that followed, and though the world continued to buzz about the small town mechanic who had taken on one of the wealthiest families in America and won, life in Pinebrook had settled into something warm, steady, and healing, an entirely different kind of wealth. Cole Harper, once a quiet widowed father scraping by on paychecks from oil changes and brake repairs, had become a guardian not just of 2 children, but of a legacy built from silence, sacrifice, and love. Yet he never let the money change him. He still woke up before dawn, brewed the same cheap coffee he always had, packed lunches with handwritten notes, and kissed Maddie, Ethan, and Lily on their foreheads before school. But now, their days were filled with new opportunities. Piano classes for Lily, science camp for Ethan, a new art set for Maddie. The small 2-bedroom house had been exchanged for a modest but beautiful countryside home with a wraparound porch, an oak tree perfect for building a tire swing, and a cozy study that still held Olivia's journal in a locked drawer like a sacred relic. But the real transformation wasn't the house, the wealth, or the headlines. It was the family they had become. Cole had learned how to braid Lily's hair on school picture day, how to handle Ethan's panic attacks when old memories resurfaced, how to include Maddie without making her feel second to the newcomers. And the kids, they had become siblings in every sense of the word. Fighting over cereal, teaming up for prank wars, cheering each other on in spelling bees and soccer games. Love had grown between them like roots in fertile soil, firm, unseen, but strong enough to weather any storm. Still, there was one thing unresolved. Olivia's journal had hinted at something beyond just the trust funds and offshore accounts. A sealed record. She'd written vaguely, something she never had time to retrieve. Cole had avoided it at first, not wanting to stir more conflict. But as the kids began to ask more questions about their mom, who she really was, what she dreamed of, what she left behind, he realized this wasn't just about protecting them anymore. It was about honoring her completely. So one crisp Saturday morning, Cole drove alone to an old bank in downtown Boston, following the faint clues Olivia had left in the journal. With Margaret Dell's help, and now holding full guardianship, he was granted access to a safety deposit box registered under Olivia's maiden name, Olivia Ann Wells. Inside, wrapped in silk, was a USB drive, a handwritten letter addressed, "To my children and the man who protects them," and a legal envelope bearing the insignia of a Geneva-based investment firm. The letter was the first thing he read, and it made his hands tremble. Olivia's handwriting was steady and strong, as if she knew exactly who would be reading it. "If you're holding this," she wrote, "then I'm gone. And if the man reading this is Cole, then thank you. I knew deep down that if something ever happened to me, you'd do what was right. Not because you had to, but because that's who you are." She went on to explain everything. The USB contained not just banking data, but a video recording, a message she had filmed 3 months before her death. In the video, Olivia appeared tired, thin, but determined. She sat in what looked like a hotel room, the skyline behind her lit up in European twilight. "Ethan, Lily, if you're watching this, I hope you're safe. I hope you're with someone who loves you. I tried to protect everything for you, but I had to hide it, or they'd take it. Your grandparents are not what they seem. They tried to control me. I gave in for a while, but I took steps to make sure your future couldn't be touched. I left breadcrumbs for someone to follow, someone who wouldn't be afraid to fight back. I hope it was Cole. If it is, you're lucky. And he's lucky to have you, too." Cole watched the video in silence, tears trailing down his cheek. Not just for Olivia's strength, but for what it must have cost her to carry all of it alone. When he returned home, he gathered the kids around the fireplace, the flames casting golden flickers across their faces. He explained everything, what he had found, what their mother had left behind. Then he showed them the video. Ethan didn't cry. Instead, he sat perfectly still, eyes locked on the screen. Lily pressed her face into Cole's side and sobbed quietly. Maddie, though too young to understand all the details, clutched Lily's hand and whispered, "She's pretty, like a storybook princess." Afterward, Cole gave them time to talk, to ask questions, to process. It was a long night, but a necessary one. And in the days that followed, something shifted. Ethan stopped having nightmares. Lily began drawing pictures of her mom, always with a crown of stars. Maddie wrote a poem called "The Mom We Share." And Cole, he felt the weight of the past finally lift. He had fulfilled Olivia's final request. Not just by safeguarding her kids, but by unearthing the truth and giving them the closure they didn't know they needed. The rest of the funds Olivia had hidden were transferred quietly into a family foundation Cole established in her name, the Olivia Wells Children's Trust, designed to support abandoned or displaced children, offering them not just money, but mentorship, education, and a second chance. News of the foundation spread quickly, especially because of Cole's refusal to take credit. He denied interviews, declined accolades. "It wasn't mine to begin with," he'd tell them. "I just passed it to the right hands." By the 1-year anniversary of Olivia's death, the family had found a rhythm that felt whole. They took a trip to the seaside town Olivia had once mentioned in her journal as the place I felt free. The children walked barefoot on the wet sand, leaving tiny footprints that quickly vanished in the tide, but their laughter rang out against the roar of the ocean. Cole stood on a rock, wind in his hair, and let himself believe, for the first time in a long while, that everything might just be okay. When they returned to Pinebrook, the town welcomed them with open arms. The mayor awarded Cole a Community Hero Medal. The school board named the new library wing after Olivia, and a mural was painted downtown. A depiction of a single father kneeling beside 3 laughing children under a golden tree whose leaves carried the names of lost mothers and found hope. On quiet evenings, Cole still found time to sit with Olivia's journal. It was worn now, its corners curled and soft, but he couldn't bring himself to lock it away. It was no longer just a warning. It was a memory, a story, a map that had brought them all here. One night, as the fireplace crackled and the children dozed around him like stars scattered across the galaxy of a life reborn, Cole whispered, "You did it, Olivia. You saved them. And now they're going to save others." For the first time in years, he slept without dreaming of what could go wrong, because everything that had once been broken had been pieced back together. Not perfectly, but beautifully. Not a fairy tale, but something even better, the truth that love, honest, patient, unwavering love, can do more than comfort. It can rebuild. It can rescue. It can redefine the future. And in the humble house on the hill, with 3 kids who had once lost everything, and a dad who'd given them back even more, that truth lived and breathed in every shared breakfast, every nightlight left on, every bedtime story read aloud by a man who never meant to be a hero, but became one anyway.